There are things about Epstein and some of the biggest true crime cases in this country that you were never supposed to see, not because they don't exist, but because they've been buried. This guy who's built 1.5 million subscriber base digs into this, and he says what's really going on is way darker than people realize.
I've been talking about Jeffrey Epstein for years,
Right.
and diving into that story. And I've part of, what I've been working on for the last 2 years are these two different investigative documentary series following these pedophile rings, historical pedophile rings. And it's a totally different line of work that I fell into through my wife and I's work. But when I tell you that some of the stuff that we're going to be revealing and talking about is crazy, that is the understatement of the century. It's been quite the journey.
It is the Paranormal Files is the YouTube channel, and the podcast is Murder in America. People should go and check both of those out. For me, the Epstein situation as a political commentator and doing news and commentary is my main job. I'm done. I mean, I'm a conservative guy, but I don't care who's on the list. I want everybody. I want it to be released. I want to know who was in the ring. Was Pizzagate really a thing? Was Epstein involved in that? If Trump is on it, I want to know, and I'm a Trump fan. So for me, and I think most people who are watching and listening right now, Colin, they want the answers, and the fact that they're not giving us the answers really pushes people to a page like yours. So when they go to your page, have you got a list of videos that are talking about Epstein already and what you've uncovered and found out?
Yeah, on my channel, The Conspiracy Files, I have been doing deep dives into Epstein for years. It was actually the very first video that I did on the channel back in 2024 was dealing with the mysterious death of Epstein and what we knew back then. Now, in the last few years, I've traveled the world interviewing survivors, working with survivors of sexual violence and these rings, and I've learned so much from them. And it is so much bigger and more insidious than people can imagine. And some of the allegations veer into Fantasyland territory where it's just so beyond the threshold that people have. They just can't bring themselves to even believe that this reality could potentially be true. But that's where I've lived for the last 11 years with my channel and my lifestyle and, being in the paranormal. So I have been examining those kind of those wilder allegations and interviewing people in for example, I was interviewing a woman in Germany, and she told me essentially of this cult that she was a part of when she was a child. And she said that her parents brought her into this cult and they were her main abusers, and she was trafficked to these different individuals that were in this group. And she told us, and I'm sitting here listening to this woman tell me this story. She told me on camera that it's really graphic and disturbing, but in the middle of one of these cult gatherings or ceremonies, these children were circled up, and essentially an adult female was placed in between these kids in the middle of the circle, and a weapon was inserted into the woman, and she was then shot and killed. And the children who were there, these are her words, were forced to lick the meat from what happened. Yeah. So reason I'm saying that is because I have talked to these people and I know these people and I'm really good friends with these people that have survived these things. So when I've gone into these investigations dealing with Epstein, my mind has already been open, and it is just shocking how many things don't make it onto, let's just call it the boogeyman, mainstream media, mainstream media outlets, even photographs of Epstein that you can find yourself in the files that it seems like they refuse to report on for, I mean, you could say unknown reasons, but I mean, I think we all know why they don't want to.
I was going to ask you as you were talking about it, and you're actually going to maybe you're using paranormal psychology or something to get this question out of my brain. Why don't we know more about it? I've been in news and information for 37 years now, and these stories are sometimes popped out, then they go away. We never ever focus on it. We never ever get an answer. We, to this moment, Colin, don't know what Jeffrey Epstein's job was. Clearly, he had billions of dollars. We don't know why he's got billions of dollars. Well, but we assume he's either Mossad or a CIA, but he might not be any of those things. We know that he's a pedophile, disgusting piece of garbage that owned an island that would fly the biggest dignitaries on the planet to his island to do allegedly disgusting things with children. Why don't we know more about this? Is there Is there a scheme in place? And it goes into conspiracy, but is there a scheme in place to hide this information to where he's got leverage, or people like him have leverage on all the legacy media, on all the big media, on everybody in government? How's that possible?
Well, I think it's a complex question that requires a multifaceted answer almost.
Right.
I mean, when it comes to legacy media, I don't know if you remember that clip of Amy, I forget her last name, Rohrbach, or she's the
Rohrbach. Yes, I do remember that.
Yeah,
she had the
that
goods.
clip.
Yeah.
Yeah, about Epstein, and she's saying on camera on the hot mic essentially that they wanted her to kill the story.
Right.
So you can see that right there. That is the mentality years ago of these mainstream kind of legacy media outlets.
Yeah.
They didn't want this to come out for one reason or another, whether it was too graphic and they didn't feel like their audience would respond to it, as callous as that is, or, they were being paid off and protected. That's just something we don't know. But what I can say and what I can speak to from personal experience, I know that they censor stories based on or about Epstein on social media. Like, it is absolutely insane. And I've tried to raise the alarm about this. But for example, on TikTok, I've got almost 4 million followers on TikTok, and I talk about Epstein every single day. And I have been one of the OGs talking about Epstein for years, and I've never let the story up. But I get about 4 to 5 videos every single week removed from my TikTok for completely unknown, mysterious reasons. They don't even provide me with a strike. They say community guidelines. This violated the guidelines. They don't let me appeal. It's actually peculiar. I can pull it out right now and show you. There are certain videos that they removed of mine that normally when you get a video removed, there's a whole process you follow. You have to go through, you do the appeal, you get it back, you see the result. For certain videos, I'm not even given the opportunity to appeal. And when I click the screen that would usually take you to the appeal screen, it brings me to this really weird, it's got like a UFO and a spaceship, and it says something went wrong. Sorry, apologies. Yeah, it's crazy. And so I can't even try to get the videos back because it doesn't give me the option. And that's happened. I mean, I was talking about Bohemian Grove on Facebook, because I went outside of the Grove and interviewed people a few years ago. And because I posted a video about Bohemian Grove on Facebook in 2024, my entire Facebook and Instagram was taken offline for about 6 months. It was insane.
Well, it is insane, and that censorship is real. I've got 1.1 million on TikTok, but you'll see there's no virality at all. I mean, it used to be like I used to do a video, I'd get 12 million views. Now I'm getting 50,000 if I'm lucky, and they're constantly telling me to buy ads. I can get 50,000 more views if I want. I don't buy any ads at all. Haven't paid for any followers, just like you haven't. We built this organically, and it's like the platforms punish you because you're telling the truth. So let me finish on Epstein this way. Charlie Kirk, before his disgusting, untimely assassination, said on, I think, Patrick Bet-David's podcast, it's clear that Epstein was blackmailing everybody. It was a blackmail scheme, and he had control and leverage over everybody. Then he just sort of is not on Earth anymore. Is that what you're finding as well? There's no doubt in my mind, because he got a slap on the wrist in 2008 or 9. He's somebody who ended up behind bars and then somehow died, allegedly. We don't even know if he's dead. And everybody that he had this leverage over still isn't talking. If the guy's dead, if he's gone, why can't we know everything now? So is it your belief, like what Charlie said, that this was all about blackmailing the biggest names on the planet?
100%. And when it comes to stories of political blackmail, there's historicity to those claims. Not only obviously we all know that politicians are compromised and they're blackmailed all the time, whether it's from a drug habit or some sort of cross-dressing kink, whatever it is. People will get that information and they will hold it against anybody. But when it comes to the kind of Epstein scheme where you're hooking in these politicians and getting them on camera doing things, we'll just say, to skirt the censors with minors.
Yes.
There are stories exactly like that from decades prior. For example, in the Plaza Hotel in the 50s, I believe it was 50s, could be early 60s, J. Edgar Hoover and Roy Cohn allegedly essentially created the sexual blackmail scheme. So they were having these parties in the Blue Suite at the Plaza Hotel. It's an infamous room. And they were doing essentially what boils down to the same thing that Epstein is accused of having done. They were bringing in politicians. They were bringing in extremely young individuals. A lot of reports have said minors, and they were secretly recording these powerful political individuals doing these things with these minors. And this is back in the 1950s and, early 1960s. As you go through time, you see this story repeated over and over again. This story pops up in Germany. If you are familiar with the Manuel Shadwald story, that's a very similar thing. A kid that was murdered and is supposedly in retaliation for his dad being involved in this sexual blackmail scheme. And then the bad boy is the Franklin cover-up and the Franklin scandal in Omaha, which is a story that I'm intimately familiar for a number of reasons. I can't talk necessarily too much about the Franklin, but are you familiar with that story?
It sounds familiar. I don't know much about it, though. Can you give us the nuts and bolts without getting too in depth with it? And by the way, those who are watching and listening, is Colin Brown. Go and check out his YouTube. It's The Paranormal Files, and his podcast is awesome, Murder in America. Go ahead, fill me in on Franklin. Just give me the nuts and bolts.
Franklin is essentially the Epstein of the 80s, the Epstein before Epstein. You had the exact same allegations being made about children being flown across the country, about parties with powerful individuals in Washington, D.C., about power brokers, victimizing children, we'll say, drugs, alcohol, parties, all of this being recorded. And it all disappeared after it was exposed. So essentially, Franklin, the main part of Franklin and the exposing of the story was in the late 80s and early 90s. And right after Franklin disappeared, according to reporting, that's when the Epstein operation, at least the part where he went to try to compromise Bill Clinton in the White House, that's when that picked up in the early 1990s. So if you want to read a book that will absolutely change your life and your mentality, especially when it comes to Epstein, I would highly recommend The Franklin Scandal by Nick Bryant. Nick's a really close friend of mine, and it is truly a life-changing book because it's the exact same story as Epstein, just before Epstein.
I'll be honest with you. I don't know anything about the story. I thought it sounded familiar, but what you just said doesn't ring any bells at all. And let me say why that's important. I was a television news anchor for a long time. I've won many awards in journalism. I know how to do the job, and I try to be aware of almost everything. Even if I don't use it on my shows, I try to be aware of everything. Why don't I know anything about that?
The Franklin story was completely buried, not only because it was buried as it was happening by local media in Nebraska. There were publishers that were alleged to have been a part of this ring by victim witnesses. But in the years afterwards, essentially what ended up happening is the main victim witness, her name's Alicia, she was imprisoned on perjury charges. So they tried to claim that she made the whole thing up, and she never changed her story. The other kids, they were threatened. They had siblings that mysteriously killed themselves in the middle of judicial proceedings in the grand jury. In the middle of the grand jury, in the middle of the Franklin grand jury, the main investigator, the lead investigator on this whole thing, his name's Gary Caradori. He is flying his plane with his 8-year-old son, Andrew, and his plane mysteriously explodes midair, and he and his son are killed. To this day, it's never been explained what happened to the plane. It's been alleged that FBI were the first people on scene. Gary's briefcase, which according to many contained compromising photos of powerful people in compromising positions, the briefcase had vanished from the wreck of the plane by the time local investigators got there, even though his son's backpack was still found mostly intact. Pretty bizarre to have the entire briefcase, handle, nuts, bolts, everything just disappear. But there have been a lot of people that died attached to the Franklin story, and they have done an absolutely immaculate job of covering it up. And what's also interesting is the same attorney general who was in office at the time that Epstein mysteriously died, Bill Barr, he was also attorney general at the time that Franklin was covered up. And that's just the very beginning.
There's a lot about Bill Barr that I would like to know, because the guy said things that he didn't mean. He meant things that he didn't say. He acted in a way that was opposite of what he said he was going to do. There's something very deep and dark about that guy that I'd like to find out. Go and binge this guy's channel, The Paranormal Files, and go check out the podcast right now, Murder in America. It's Colin Brown. Let's talk about Nancy Guthrie. Why that for me helped build my page. I gained 20,000 followers in a month because I was covering Nancy Guthrie from angles that weren't being covered in the legacy media, and people just were hungry and thirsty for information on that case. Is this just the perfect storm case that brings people to YouTube, to people like you, people like me at a much lower level, to find out what they're not getting from the news? You've got somebody who's a famous person, who's a morning show star. You got her mother is missing, and we don't know why she's missing. You got blood on the front door. You got some weird figure that shows up in a video that they uncovered, days later or weeks later. You've got a really incompetent sheriff in Pima County, Arizona, whose entire deputy staff wants him gone. Not one vote of confidence for Chris Nanos. Is that why this is so interesting, and because we have no closure?
I would say so. I mean, it's a story that I think everybody can empathize with and relate to. I mean, how horrific to have your mother or father taken from their own home and to have no answers. And then on top of that, you add so many different layers. I mean, the incompetent police department, the mysterious evidence, like you just mentioned, and the fact that this is all related to a very recognizable individual in America. Those are kind of the symptoms or the circumstances that would be needed to create the perfect storm of a true crime case. And I don't know. I think it's shocking that there are still no answers, but I mean, this is the world that I live in essentially and work in and breathe in and out at every moment of the day. There are so many cases like this throughout U.S. history. I mean, like at the top of the show, we were talking about Ted Bundy and the recent DNA discovery. I mean, for me, that's shocking because there's literally, I mean, I knew that Ted Bundy more than likely had more victims.
Right.
And it is interesting because when I did a paranormal investigation in Salt Lake City in Utah years ago relating to Ted Bundy, we actually felt like we had received some sort of an answer during that investigation saying that there were more victims from the area. And now, years later, years after the fact, DNA has linked Bundy to another murder in Utah. Is it in Salt Lake City? I can't remember the exact city where this murder took place.
I'm not sure, but I will tell you this. You don't know this about me. I grew up in Florida, so the Ted Bundy case was a very, very big case. Not only in Florida, it was nationally as well. But there wasn't social media, and there wasn't, there were 2,000 channels on your TV, so we were getting the bulk of it immediately in Florida. And what jumps out at me about that case, and maybe you can opine about this a bit, the only reason why that case was so big and so intriguing to people is A, good-looking guy. B, really good lawyer. The judge told him, you're a really good lawyer. I wish that we'd have met in different circumstances. And C, women were literally trying to still get with this guy as he was getting ready for death row. That angle of it, it's almost like modern day Mangione. This guy's a good looking guy that everybody wants to, all the women are, oh my God, he killed somebody, but so what? Healthcare sucks in America. Is that component in true crime stories important when it comes to virality, when it comes to building the page, and when it comes to seeking out information that you're not getting from the legacy media? Because again, good-looking guy, very intriguing. Savannah Guthrie, very well known. You got Ted Bundy, a case that was 45 years ago, that now is coming back to the surface. Is that a component that really does draw attention and a crowd?
So many different things I could comment on here that are interesting.
Well, I have you on. Yeah, go ahead. Comment away.
The age of the serial killer is over in so many ways, which is why I think these stories are so interesting, especially to younger individuals like myself who didn't really grow up in the era where these serial killers were, terrorizing the public. Now, there is a lot to be said about some of those serial killer stories. Some of those individuals, I think, are responsible for more victims than have been discovered. But there are stories like the Son of Sam where I believe that the police got it all wrong. And they actually, I don't know, there's a great series on Netflix called The Sons of Sam and a great book by Mari Terry, or not Mari Terry. I think it's Mari Terry. I can't remember his name, but
are you going to tell me that Berkowitz wasn't the Son of Sam? What are you telling me?
I think that he was involved, but I think that there's so much extenuating evidence and there's so much just material surrounding the Son of Sam case.
I have to go binge your channel tonight now. I mean, what the heck are you talking about? So there's new. I have to learn about Franklin. You're saying that Berkowitz might not have acted alone, but he was involved somehow. Let's go back to Bundy, because we have this late breaking evidence, and you and I can talk for 7 hours. Truly, I think we can. We're not going to, but I think we can. When it comes to Bundy, that case has been over for so long. He's dead. He's long dead. And if I recall, it was like 17 co-eds or something that allegedly he had a part in killing or killed himself. And again, here was this suave and debonair guy in the courtroom, really as a great lawyer. And now you're telling me there's an allegation that he did something in Utah. I mean, if that resurfaces now, you're probably going to be able to do 10 videos on that. And because, like you said, you're way younger than I am. I'm probably old enough to be your father. So there are a lot of people from my era, from my generation, who know a lot about this case, but there are people that know nothing about this case. So if I'm a brand new viewer and I'm 28 and I tune into the Paranormal Files or Murder in America, what do you need me to know about Ted Bundy that's going to grab my attention and make me come back every day?
Well, what we like to do with our shows is tell the full story. And okay. I mean, that's kind of something that you don't also get in the mainstream media, legacy media. They don't have the time to be able to. Well,
they make a lot of assumptions, whereas you can actually spell the entire story out. I love that.
Yeah. And it's, that's my wife's life's work. She absolutely is an incredible researcher. We have an incredible team of writers and researchers that help bring the show to life. But, when Courtney and I, my wife and I, were starting the show, we kind of listened to other programs, and the one thing that we always thought of and we kept telling each other was we didn't feel like we were given enough information, like we didn't know the full story. And so with Ted Bundy, I mean, you can watch a documentary about Ted Bundy and learn an hour's worth of details about this guy's life and his crimes. But in reality, I mean, it would take years to go through the full life story if you had every detail. And that's kind of how these crimes, go unnoticed and undetected for so many years. It's a thing where, I mean, this DNA is absolutely incredible. Just in Houston, I don't know if you saw the news, they had they just made an arrest in the Lover's Lane murders, which is a very, very famous unsolved homicide, double homicide here in Houston. And it was through a DNA match. Right. And recently in Austin, you also had an arrest made in the Yogurt Shop murders, which is another infamous unsolved case, another DNA match. We cover stories about this all the time on the show. If I were someone who had murdered somebody back in the 70s or 60s and I had gotten away with it up until this point, I would be shitting my pants because this DNA is becoming so good. Right. And it's just it's bringing all of these stories back into the light. I mean, Ted Bundy, we're talking about a case that really played out in the 70s, 80s, but it's 2026 and we're finding new victims. Something that always shocked me is John Wayne Gacy, Pogo the Clown. He's one of the most infamous serial killers in American history. There are still victims of John Wayne Gacy's that have never been identified. Same with here in Houston, Dean Corll, the Candyman. I actually live in the Heights where Dean Corll was hunting for these young victims. His candy shop was 4 blocks down the road from me. There are victims of his that have still, to this day, not been identified. So it's not shocking to me at all that there would be another victim of Ted Bundy's. And I personally believe that there are even more. And I think that sadly, because some of these killers were good at what they did back then, we're never going to be able to actually figure out the proper tally of victims and kind of paint the full picture, because let's just face it, they didn't have the technology back then. It must have been so easy to be a murderer back in the day when there were no live streams and no security camera systems and no profiling and, all this tech that we have now. It's always shocking to me to think of, what people got away with back then that we still don't know about.
Well, with Bundy, I'm surprised it's Utah because he did his killing in Florida. So, I mean, that's crazy to me. There was a case, and I can't think of the guy's name. You'll probably know this off the top of your head, but there was a serial killer case where the guy got away with it and just stopped doing it, and they ended up getting him when he was in his 70s. And it was a named case as well. He was killing young women. And it was a DNA match from like 1974 or something. I think the guy was a former cop. He was a cop, and there were people found dead all over the place where he was near, but they never tied 2 and 2 together. And then they caught him when he was in his 60s or 70s, and he admitted to everything. And he started to say, oh, yeah, well, no, that's not that one. There's another victim over there that I buried over here. You know what case I'm talking about?
That I believe is Golden State Killer Joseph
Yes.
DeAngelo.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I mean,
That is a twisted story.
but you're right. People should be, taking that in their pants if they're a killer and got away with it. Because think about it. In 1995, when O.J. Simpson was on trial, nobody trusted DNA yet. They had him dead to rights. It was a 1 in 8 billion chance, and there weren't 8 billion people on Earth yet, that it was him, and the jury still acquitted him. So people now trust DNA. This is a science that I'm guessing evolved even more since O.J. Simpson. But do you think that what you said earlier really jumped out at me? You think that there are more victims of these serial killers than we know? Because I thought once they get caught, they're like, yeah, there are 7 more over here, and then I got these people over here. Do you think they're not admitting to everything?
There are tons of stories where years later more victims are discovered. And I mean, you got to put yourself in that frame of mind, the mind of a killer for a moment back in the 70s
you can't,
or 80s.
though. Yeah, but we really honestly can't, because we're not. No. But I get it. So if you did the deed, what would you do? I mean, I get that. Do you know in your heart of hearts, and maybe your wife and you talked about this on your podcast, go check it out, Murder in America, or check out the Paranormal Files. Do you know why we're so interested in serial killers? What is it about cases like that that makes us, as human beings that will never do anything like that, so intrigued by it?
I could sit here all day and try to tell you what I believe in, but I don't have the answers. Like, my wife was a psych major in college. That's what she graduated with, a degree in psychology. And she's tried to understand this for years. And, I've had so many conversations with people. Like, we do the show because we like to memorialize victims. We like to tell these stories. We like to keep these stories alive and remind people of some of the horrific things that have happened in U.S. history that they don't want to talk about, or, we can't let people forget about some of these things and these events. But I don't know, there are other individuals that are interested in these stories for a multitude of reasons, and it's a whole spectrum. There are people who are psychologists and pathologists and people that really want to understand the criminal psyche, who are into these stories for those reasons. And then there are also individuals who are inspired by stories like this, to commit further acts of violence. So as horrific as that is, it's hard to even come up with a singular reason why I would think people are interested in these stories, because there's so many different reasons. And we've tried our hardest to make a show that is focused on the victims, and we donate every week to a different charity, and we work with family members and survivors, and it's been a really, really rewarding journey. But at the same time, it's just so shocking to me to see how many murders there are in America, not only every year, but I mean every day. It's an endless cycle of violence that is a real problem in this country that we are grappling with at all times, not even just relating to guns, and you could get into the whole debate of gun control and everything, but just the concept of violence and murder. It is so prevalent in American culture and society. You almost don't know what to even do. It's crazy.
The Paranormal Files is the YouTube page. Go there and follow right now. Make sure you subscribe. Also, check out Murder in America. It's Colin Brown. I'll leave you with a couple of things. One, I think the reason why we're so intrigued, just from my perspective, is a study that was done 20 or 30 years ago about why we slow down and we rubberneck when there's an accident on the highway. I think, first of all, we're glad it wasn't us. And second of all, we want to make sure we have empathy. We want to make sure nobody's dead. We hope everybody survived the crash. When we hear about these serial murderers, we think to ourselves, that could easily have been me. How did they end up, becoming victims? How did they end up getting away with it so much? So I think that, again, I think mostly people are good and we have human empathy. We want to know the ins and outs. But what I do want to leave you with, and I want you to leave my audience with, is how do you maintain your credibility? And the reason why I ask that is there is so much AI now. There's so much misinformation out there, so much disinformation. People will very fervently look in the camera and say, this is the way it is. You and I, because we have some knowledge, know it's not that way. But those who are watching will believe it and will buy it hook, line, and sinker. In what I do in politics, in that realm, there are a lot of liars all the time, every day. And you've got to sift through that. And I think the reason why I'm so popular on TikTok and why my show is so good on radio is that people know I'm going to do the research and really give them the skinny. Do you find that that's a barrier as well, that you and your wife have to make sure you dotted every I, you crossed every T? Or because if you lose credibility in what you do, you lose your following, you lose your income.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting to me, actually, working in not only in the true crime space in general with my wife and I's show, but I have my entire second podcast and channel, which is exclusively about what people would label conspiracy theories, but
Right.
I'm more inclined to call it alternate history.
Okay.
And with every single show that I do for my channel, The Conspiracy Files, I provide the primary source documents, and I link every single book that I glean information from, and I link every program and every web page, and you can visit and verify all the information for yourself. And to me,
Yes.
that was incredibly important starting the show, because I wanted to take these stories like the Franklin story, like the Epstein story, that were living out beyond the realm of comprehension for most individuals,
Right.
and kind of pull them in to a point where people could start to believe in these things, because it's not like, you know, a conspiracy is really a conspiracy. Most of the time there's a kernel of truth, even if there's a lot of disinformation surrounding it. There's always a little bit of truth where this whole thing, you know, starts from and it launches off from. Now, I have had a lot of people not only send me disinformation, and I think that there are indeed 1000% actual disinformation agents out there on the internet.
100%,
I mean, clearly
yes.
there are.
No doubt.
But like with the Epstein stuff, I covered any and every file that I could at the very beginning when all these releases came out, and I had millions of people that were getting this information from me, and I was providing every single document, every source that I could possibly find. And it's so funny to me because about a month in, I all of a sudden in the same week, I had like 4 or 5 different people randomly take my video and say, "Oh, this guy's lying to you. He is saying this document was this." And for example, this one guy's video got like 800,000 views, but he was lying in his video about what I said. He just took a screenshot of me and said that I said this, but I was really saying this. And
well,
so,
he was a clout goblin. He was clout grabbing because of your following and because of your truth. But see, that's the problem. A guy like that will build a following. And I don't know how you feel about Candace Owens. I'll say from my perspective, a lot of what she said is BS. A lot of what she says is, tomorrow I'm really going to reveal it. And she gets 3 million views on every live stream that she does. People are making $50,000 and $60,000 a day sometimes by doing that. So there's a great incentive to lie. I love that you're not lying. I love that you are, in fact, giving the evidence, giving the links, showing the proof, because that's going to make your channel explode even and soar higher than these other channels that aren't telling the truth. I love that you do it that way. Listen, Colin, I could talk to you for like 7 hours, but I know that you're busy. I know you just jumped in the chair getting back from doing some work for the channel. So we got Paranormal Files. You also have the Conspiracy Files?
that's it.
Okay, and then Murder in America is the podcast. Everybody should go and check out everything that you do. I really appreciate you coming on. My daughter is one of your biggest fans. I've become a very quick fan, and I'm going to be binging this weekend most of what you put out there. Let me leave you with this one question. What is the number one video that's gotten the top views on your channel that we should maybe go and check out why that did so great, and maybe it'll be an introduction to what it is that you do? Is there one that's gone just nuts?
There's a couple. There's 3 that I would recommend. The first is my top video, which is an interview I did with a guy about the Superstition Mountains in Arizona. It's absolutely so compelling. Second would be a murder house investigation that we did 2 years ago, where we actually brought in luminol and sprayed the house, and we were able to find all the blood stains from this old murder. And we were investigating the house. It is a crazy video, but my personal favorite video that I've ever done is called Pedophile Island. And it is a trip that we took to the Epstein Island that existed before Epstein in Michigan, in Lake Michigan.
Oh, wow.
And it's that story that's actually the basis for the documentary series that now I've spent the last 2 years investigating, traveling from Germany to India, hunting down perpetrators from this story that escaped justice. So if there's one documentary that I think people should watch, it is Pedophile Island, because it is just the most mind-blowing stuff you'll see. It still blows my mind, and I've been working with survivors of this network for the last few years.
Well, I love the work that you do. I'm going to go get myself familiar with everything that you've done. I will check those out first. Hopefully everybody watching and listening will do the same. The Paranormal Files, the Conspiracy Files, Murder in America. His name is Colin Browen. And man, I hope we can do this again. Thanks for finding some time today. I appreciate it.
I'll come back on whenever, man. I mean, the Epstein rabbit hole is unending.
It's deep.
We could talk about this for weeks at this point.
1,000%. Colin, thanks a million, brother. I appreciate you. That's going to do it for Unshaken and Unafraid with Joe Pags this time. Make sure you subscribe. Another one to drop very soon.